Well, it's actually happened. Probably the most blatant example of the meme where it's okay to be any kind of phobic or ist or whatever, as long as you include white at the beginning, you know? Like, you can be sexist, homophobic, transphobic, whatever, as long as you add like white as a prefix to whatever you're about to say about that group, you're completely fine. You can get away with it. That's like the meme, right? In a lot of woke spaces. Because, and I'm going to give you guys a very harsh wake-up call here if you haven't already gotten it. Someone being on the left doesn't automatically make them a good person. There are a lot of people on the left that, let's just say they fit an aesthetic that would immediately make you want to support them if you are a lefty. Not even I'm not talking about demographics. I'm talking about like an aesthetic. They don't seem like the kind of person that wouldn't be a trustworthy lefty content creator. They seem comfy and cozy and chill. Those figures, not always, but sometimes, do tend to be the ones that oftentimes end up being kind of abusive pieces of shit behind the scenes, and they're just kind of covering it up with a very, squeaky clean, cozy, comfy, kind of teddy bear, what was the term? Care Bear kind of, aesthetic, but deep down they're very, very vitriolic, mean, horrible people that are just using the aesthetic of progressivism and being a good person, meeting the bare minimum of having the political views that like people like trans people and gay people and women and all that should have rights and whatnot. Like, meeting that standard is apparently like, it makes it so that, good people not, who cares if this person did it so bad, that that they at least have the right political opinions. That kind of stuff happens all the time in this space. It's a real problem. I've called out plenty of instances of it in the past. I've predicted plenty of instances of it in the past, and I've been the victim of plenty of instances of it in the past. So, with that said, let's talk about the meme. The fucking meme. So, I've already seen this TikTok. It actually triggered the fuck out of me because, while I may not be non-binary or trans, I am a cis, het, straight white man. I said straight twice there. Regardless, so double straight, I guess. Regardless, I do still feel like I can, speak over and for trans people here, as I always do. You know how it is here on the Xanderhall stream. We're always speaking over and for trans people. No voices for trans people in this community. Am I right? No, that's the thing they like to say on the Twitter sphere. No, in all seriousness, I do get quite upset when I see when I see bigotry towards, people who, I care about. I care about trans people. I've got friends that are trans, and I genuinely don't want to live in a country or a world in which people are discriminated against or put down or have their rights taken from them simply for who they are, how they're born, or, God forbid, if they're born the wrong way and they decide to be who they truly are. I don't want to live in that world. Even if I'm not going to be the victim of that kind of thing, that's just not the world I want. With that said, that is why this particular tweet, or sorry, should I say TikTok, which was posted as a tweet, kind of triggered me. Actually, I don't think it's a TikTok. I think it's actually just a Twitter video. From this account, Cutie Patootie. Do not go and harass them. They are a joke, to say the least. Though I will tell you guys, this tweet got a worrying amount of likes. 6,800, by the way. So, remember that this is not an unpopular sentiment in the sphere of Twitter. I'm going to go ahead and play the video once without interrupting it, if I can keep myself from interrupting it, and let you guys just soak in the brain damage.
Hey there, it's Hud Raconte, and I've had this hot take in my head for a couple of weeks. I've been debating, going back and forth a lot about whether or not I should share it with you guys, but today I just decided, fuck it, I'm just going to say what I got to say, and if people don't like it, we can tussle in the comment section. But basically, here it goes. I don't really believe that you could be a non-binary. Something about it doesn't make sense to me. How are you going to be a non-binary, but it's people who invented the gender binary, it's people who uphold the gender binary, it's people who spread the gender binary around the world to justify the oppression of Black and brown people globally. It's something about that just doesn't make sense. Like, how are people going to opt out of the gender binary. Meanwhile, we're seeing cis Black women.
For those of you guys that can't tell, the flashing the paper on screen, it means white. It means white. She's doing the let's use they them because I'm not we're not confident on pronouns here, guys. We should never be. Yeah, they're doing the hotep thing. Is that a hotep thing? Like showing a white piece of paper on screen instead of saying white? I assumed it was just a cringy little TikTok thing. This is a no. This is a hotep talking point. We're going to be getting into that in a moment, Pillow. Don't you worry. As a matter of fact, I might even want to bring you on to talk about it a little bit because you did a video on this. Like particularly the I'll get into it. We'll see. If I don't feel like I can cover it in perfect detail, then I'll bring a Pillow on to talk about it because they've done much more research into this than I have, and they've done a whole video on it. So they know the deal. But let's just play the rest of the video.
Being pushed out of, you know, sporting events and stuff like that because their testosterone is too high. But we get to have people who the gender binary has done nothing but serve tell us that they want to opt out, and they're not dismantling the gender binary. It don't make sense. It don't make.
A Pillow getting me canceled once again. Okay, so we got to talk about something here, all right? And a Pillow already got us off onto like the start of it, but many of you guys probably aren't familiar with it. Many of you may be, but there is a movement out there that can most broadly be referred to as Black separatists. They are basically Nazis. Line up their ideology, and basically everything is they're Nazis, except for they believe the Jews are white people that are trying to pretend to be oppressed by taking on the label of Jew, and that there are no white Jewish people, and that there are only Black Jewish people, and that all white Jewish people are actually fake Jewish. And on top of that, these white Jews are pushing a gay, trans, homosexual, globalist agenda onto the Black community to keep them down and force them into a worse socioeconomic position, as well as allow gayness and homosexuality to infiltrate their communities, thus turning their men more feminine, their women more masculine, and everything else in between, which they argue is degenerating American Black culture and Black society, and thus causing them to fall further underneath the foot of the oppressive white man. So, is that not a pretty good summary of what they believe? Would you guys say that's a pretty good summary of their ideology? Just broadly, it's real. There's a lot of different groups with different labels that fall under this Black separatist umbrella, but I use Black separatist as an umbrella term because we're talking about a lot of different people. Some of them are in groups, some of them are in movements, some of them aren't, some of them just hold individual beliefs. Some of these ideas aren't even like full on like super radical hotep ideas, in the same way that like the trans bathroom stuff has kind of like permeated beyond like your average like conservative or turf talking spaces online. It's permeated into more like modern culture now. In that same way, not every single conservative Black person you meet that thinks that like that gayness is feminizing men in the Black community, which is a pretty common belief. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of homophobia in the Black community, and that's where it stems from in a large way, is that it's something that's feminizing Black men. I've seen a lot of that. Tariq Nasheed likes to say that. And it's very bizarre. And you'll notice it is exactly the same as neo-Nazi white supremacist talking points. From the bigotry against gender non-conforming people to the nationalism and and of course they want an ethno-state and the desire for an ethno-state. In fact, you wouldn't be surprised. Black separatists and neo-Nazis and white supremacists have often worked together and unified in their mutual seemingly, mutual desire for complete racial separation in ethnostates. Now, of course, the white supremacists and neo-Nazis want to exterminate everybody who is not of their same exact skin color and who thinks exactly the same as them, looks exactly the same as them, and is exactly the same as them. They want everybody who isn't like that exterminated and eradicated off the face of the earth, their bloodline included, so that they can rule the earth entirely. No matter how many times Nazis try to tell you they just want an ethno-state, they just want their people to be safe, it is never the case. They don't, separate but equal is never a sincere statement. It has never worked. It is not a sincere statement. It has always been a twisting and a softening of reality to make people less willing to fight against segregation. Segregation always leads to genocide, mistreatment, and one group or the other being treated as a second-class citizen or worse. It always leads to that. And saying separate but equal is just a dog whistle. It's just softening of language to make it sound nicer. Political correctness originates from the right. You know that, right? Conservatives, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, dog whistling. When neo-Nazis and white supremacists dog whistle, they're being politically correct. That's what that is. When the right started arguing against political correctness, they aren't arguing against the concept of political correctness. They're arguing against the need for political correctness. They don't want any social responsibility or stigma whatsoever for their beliefs, their actions, or what they say at all. They want to be able to be the crazy guy who sits on the side of the street and screams about how trans people are degenerate pedophiles and to not be judged for it. They want to be able to build massive multimedia empires on things like that, get people killed and hurt, and spread massive amounts of misinformation and makes tons of money without any consequences. That's the world they want to live in. We're getting a little bit off track here. Let's veer a little bit back more into what's a little more important here, and that's the discussion around this. Okay. Something that a lot of people on the left kind of, they'll say they understand it and they realize it, but their behavior and their actions say otherwise, is they kind of forget that demographic groups are not a monolith. Just because someone is American and black does not mean they vote Democrat. It does not mean that they are in favor of BLM. It does not mean that they are in any way progressive. In some communities, in fact, it would be a higher indicator that they're more likely to lean more conservative. For a long time, if I'm being honest with you, what's held back Republicans from dominating the American electorate, like electoral cycle, has been their unyielding racism. The same thing even expands to like people who are gender non-conforming or have differing sexualities. Gay people and trans people and non-binary people are Republicans and conservatives too. Nazis even. You've seen it. Just because somebody happened to be born a certain way in a way they can't change doesn't mean they can't fall into a horrible ideology, or a really stupid one at least, or a stupid set of ideas. And I feel as though sometimes Pillow did. Pillow used to be far right. I feel like people can kind of almost, on the left, kind of pretend as though being part of a certain group gives you a little bit more credibility than it ought to. Listen, guys, I'm not saying that we shouldn't listen to the voices of trans people, for example, but how many trans people have you personally met that you would not want to be the leading voice on trans issues? How many can you name that you would, how many trans people can you name that you would rather have me speak on trans issues than them? Not saying that means cis people ought to speak over trans people. I'm saying that just because you fall into a certain identity doesn't mean you're based on that issue all of a sudden. It's just not how it works. It's just not. That just isn't how it works. Everybody's an individual. Everybody is a product of their environment. I know that, so brave of Zan to say this. I know this sounds like very common sense shit, like, day one logic bullshit or something, but people really seem to forget about this in the way they act. I feel like people are in need of a reminder, Just because somebody is non-binary and POC does not mean that they are correct or that their opinion is worth a damn in regards to non-binary or POC issues or any crossover between. Their identity does not mean they are credible on the issue. Does it mean they may have good stories that can back up, with personal experience? Sure, but no one's an island. Everyone is a product of their environment. We literally saw. Did you guys not see the trans or the femboy catboy Nazis we saw in Omegle? Who remembers the Canadian femboy cat ear thigh high Nazi we met on Omegle? Who remembers that? Listen, guys, your identity does not determine your politics. There are non-binary catboy Nazis out there, guys. I know it makes no sense, but it's true. It's true. So with that said, we need to get past that right away. Your identity does not make you part of a monolithic belief system by default, okay? And with that said, homophobia and even just insane conservative conspiracy theories that are rampant among any other demographic are also rampant among the Black community. And also among many non-white communities that are immigrants here in America. Like, for example, Cuban immigrants in Florida. Oh, boy. Oh, my God. Just stop being so fucking racist to Hispanic immigrants, Republicans in Florida, and or just Republicans in general, and the Cuban vote is yours. Holy fuck. Oh, my God. Listen, guys. I'm maybe it's certainly generalizing, but a lot of Cuban immigrants and just generally Cuban families in Florida are conservative as fuck. The nativity scenes out in their yard and the cross, the American flag, don't tread on me. I knew Cuban families who had Confederate flags in their yard. It's crazy shit. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So with that said, all right, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the hyper Christianity aspect of the Black community, doesn't that go back to slavery? Isn't that a pass on thing from slavery? Yeah, because if you were taken from Africa, you probably would have been secular, Jewish, or Muslim, right? So Christianity was beaten into Black people culturally over generations. So that there is an argument to make actually that the bigotry, the homophobia, the NB-phobia, which in large part stems from the hyper-Christianity, conservatism that was beaten into Black people culturally and physically back during the times of slavery here in the US. You could argue that same mindset of that crazy conservative mindset is bearing its ugly head here, in which you've got it's conservatism and the crazy conservative ideology and the conspiracy theories, the idea that people who just want to live their lives and who are just loving who they love could destroy your culture or your society. No group, regardless of their history, is immune to that kind of propaganda. Just how it is. Nationalism is universal. You can convince someone that their race and their heritage and their people is what matters and that it's under threat, then you can convince them to do or believe anything. And I think that's what's happened here. Now, let's acknowledge the actual arguments now, because you'll notice that I haven't actually acknowledged any of their arguments here. I've mostly done a deep analysis on how all the fucking stuff with involving race and bigotry and all that. We did all that meme, right? But let's actually go again, talk about the arguments here, because the thing about these arguments that's so worrying to me. Oh wait, it is a TikTok. There's the TikTok logo. I didn't even notice it. The thing about this that's so worrying to me is that much like any other effective conspiracy theory or lie, there are a lot of grains of truth thrown into what they said here. So I'm going to pick out what's true, I'm going to pick out what's false, and I'm going to point out where certain lines kind of lead to bad conclusions. I think where they set certain ideas up that I think naturally lead to very bad problematic conclusions. Yes, I have said this for years. The worst Christian aspects are prevalent in the Black community because it's been beaten, raped, and murdered into the Black population over hundreds of years. Yeah. Um. Yeah. 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 Anyway, let's go ahead and respond to the arguments.
Hey there, it's Fred Raconte, and I've had this hot take in my head for a couple of weeks. I've been debating, going back and forth a lot about whether or not I should share it with you guys, but today I just decided, fuck it, I'm just gonna say what I gotta say, and if people don't like it, we can tussle in the comment section. But basically here it goes. I don't really believe that you could be a non-binary.
Okay, so that is. Let's imagine this is being broken down like a high school essay, you know? So that is the thesis statement. I don't believe that means white people, the white piece of paper. White people can be non-binary. Now, my response to this, just that statement right off the bat, is it doesn't matter who you are. Someone else's gender identity is not your business, and whether or not they can be that identity or they are valid or whatever is not up to you and is not your say. Anybody who is non-binary or is like a supporter of non-binary people or anything like that, which I assume the individual we're responding to falls into one of those groups, either non-binary or supporter of non-binary people. Just the way they're talking about it seems like they claim at least to be a supporter of non-binary people. So yeah, it's no one's say who like no one else's say if what your identity is. It's your decision entirely, your control entirely, your say entirely, your business entirely. Whoever else's business you make it their part of their business is your business. It is your decision to make other people part of that business. Okay, you understand what I mean? It is your decision. This person does not get to say you don't get to be non-binary. That is not how this works. That is not how this works. Just there you go. That'd be my response to that singular statement.
Something about it doesn't make sense to me. How are you going to be a non-binary, but it's people who invented the gender binary?
How can you be white and non-binary when it's white people who invented the gender binary? So I doubt what was said earlier on, where this is a take I've had for a while, and I've thought about posting this for a while, and I decided to. I don't believe that, because I feel like 10 seconds of thinking should be able to make you realize that's a really dumb statement. How can white people be non-binary when white people invented the gender binary? So, for starters, white people didn't invent the gender binary. That's simply not true. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, the gender binary as we see it today came about most likely because we don't actually know. We don't actually know where the gender binary comes from. Like when we started, when we, like as humans, first started to differentiate men and women. We don't actually know. Our best guess at the moment is that our caveman brains saw that there were overwhelmingly, like 99.99 repeating percent of the time, just generalities that you could drop two types of humans into. There were the humans that had the breasts and the vaginas and gave birth, and there were the humans that had like pecs, I guess you could say, and penises and shot cum out of their dicks and made birth happen. That was basically what our caveman brains saw, and in those groups you could differentiate other things into, like the ones with dicks were typically bigger and musclier. The ones with vaginas were typically smaller and faster, and able to get around a little more nimblier. So that naturally led to things such as the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, where typically women were seen as the ones who would either be gathering and foraging or engaging in more light farming and agriculture, and cooking and less physically demanding jobs. You can't doubt that level of practicality definitely shaped the gender binary as we see it today, as the gender binary is basically inextricably kind of tied to the gender expectations that come with that binary, or with whatever dice roll you get, I guess. So, like, across the world, most likely, cultures developed the gender binary. There are outliers historically, like going back thousands of years, there are outliers, but most cultures, even historically going back tens of thousands of years, considered gender, or what we would now consider to be gender. Maybe they wouldn't have called it gender. Maybe it wasn't as conceptualized or thought out back then, but what we would now consider to be gender was a binary, pretty much. Not saying there weren't exceptions, but most of the time it was a binary, and it was probably born out of practicality, really. But here's the thing about humans. We are not constrained to the same whims of nature as other animals, right? You know, we know there are gay animals out in the wild. For all we know, there are dysphoric animals out in the wild as well, but how would you be able to tell? You know, we know there's suicidal and depressed animals. That happens as well. So there's no reason to believe that there can't be trans animals, or transsexual animals, to be more specific, because I do think that gender dysphoria and bodily sexual dysphoria, whatever you want to call it, probably, while connected, can also be separate from each other. You can have either or, I guess. I don't know. It's so fucking confusing, guys. Just trust me, okay? Just trust me. It's my job to talk about this shit, so by necessity, I know a lot about it. Okay, can you just just trust me, okay? Non-binary white people are valid. Okay, I don't need to. Do I need to go on a history lesson on gender to explain why a non-binary white person is valid? Well, okay. Okay, I'm too lightheaded and high for this.
It's people who uphold the gender binary. It's people who...
Okay, so if it's white people who uphold the gender binary, but if you're a white non-binary person, you are simply by existing challenging the gender binary. Like, by being non-binary and white, you are... Or just by being non-binary, you're challenging the gender binary. That's what that is. That's what being binary is. What do you expect? That's exactly what it is. Simple as. The paper thing is so cringe. Holy shit. Yeah, should I do that? Because Twitch won't let you say the C slur? Should I just get a saltine and, like, put it on a paper plate next to me, and every time I want to say the C slur, just grab it and flash it on screen like that, and then take it off screen? That would be great. Twitch would get me, 100%.
Spread the gender binary around the world to justify the oppression of Black and brown people.
This is literally original sin, okay? Listen, all right? Even if hypothetically, I was the descendant of, like, a slave owner, okay? That would not make me morally responsible for the sin of slavery. That's literally, like, the concept of original sin. That's not how it works. However, what this sounds a lot like is an actually good and true argument which ought to be believed and supported, which is, generally speaking, most white people in America are either complicit in or benefit from the systems of oppression that were established by those slave owners, etc. And at the very least, it's worth acknowledging it and knowing about it, being educated about it, and trying to make it a little bit right, at least, you know? At least trying to stop the ways in which, like, the after effects of it are still reverberating today and still in place today. Yeah, systemic white supremacy is still around in America. And it needs to be fought.
Globally. It's something about that just doesn't make sense. Like, how are people going to opt out of the gender binary. Meanwhile, we're seeing cis black women being pushed out of, you know, sporting events and stuff like that because.
So, this is a good argument if you flip it around entirely. They are trying to argue that cis black women getting kicked out of sporting events because of higher testosterone levels that surpass a threshold that was set by transphobic policymakers that set those boundaries to keep trans women out of competing in those sports. They are trying to put the blame on the trans women that were trying to compete, that the transphobes put the limits in place for, or that transphobes forced the limits to be put in place for. Imagine that. That's largely due to racists and TERFs. They both despise black women. Yeah, oh my god. It's almost like, oh my god. It's almost like the people who want to take rights away from others and shit on how others live their lives when it's not hurting anyone else tend to overwhelmingly just end up believing the same fucking shit at the end of the day. It's always the same fucking shit. It always is. I'm sorry. Actually, even hotter take, because, you know, listen, all right. This TikToker believes in astrology. 100%. Okay? Those glasses tell me all I need to know. This is an astrology believer if I've ever seen one, okay? Vosh did a segment or like a clip or something I saw pop up in my recommended recently. I don't remember. It was probably on a clip channel. About astrology and how people who believe in astrology aren't necessarily fascists, but like aspects of astrology are definitely fascistic. And he is 100% right. If you believe that like star signs or some gay shit like that determines your personality and who you are, and there's nothing you can do to change that, then you're only a few steps away from believing in genocide, eugenics, and you know, segregation. You know, like you're not too far off from falling into that area. Zan, no. Oh no, who am I going to upset? What slice of Twitter is about to get mad? Gay is a term created by the white colonizers. uh, Astrology is only good for the funny, ironic insult. You can't use that. It's colonial. That is true. Gay is a white colonizer word, like in its origin. Same goes for the F slur too. Oh my. Okay. Never mind. Never mind. Somebody just sent me a screenshot today, of just a bunch of. It was like it was of a trans. I think of a trans GC, and somebody asked, does Zan have the F and T slur pass? And then a bunch of people saying, yeah, of course. I thought he already did. I don't like that I thought he already did thing. That makes me think you were calling me a fucking egg, and I hate that shit. That's cringe as fuck. Stop that. Stop that. That's cringy fucking behavior, okay? I might do a whole segment on why the egg memeing is actually harmful to the trans community online. Should I do that? Should I do a segment on why, like, when trans people constantly like hurl egg at any cis person that like steps out of the anywhere from like does something that's stereotypically like a meme for trans people to do, like playing Fallout New Vegas, for example, or God forbid steps out of the gender binary, gets called an egg. Don't you guys think in a time when we're trying to break the gender binary, claiming that anyone who steps outside of it but still identifies as a man or a woman, whatever gender they were assigned at birth or whatever, but doesn't identify as trans and bends that stereotype or that expectation, don't you think it's a little bit harmful to then say you must be trans then when they say they aren't? Come on. You guys can probably put together 2 and 2 and realize how that can be a harmful line of things. And I'm not saying it's like malicious or anything. I know it's just a jokey meme, but in all seriousness, like, I know people who, because of the egg meming stuff, who were trans, were like unironically like kind of, I won't say bullied, but pressured into coming out as trans before they were ready, and then realized they weren't ready, got scared out of being out, and then thought they weren't trans and thought it was just a mistake and they were, conditioned to being trans, and then later on realized they actually are trans and they just weren't ready to come out yet, and then they come out later. That's happened to people that I know. That has happened. I'm not saying it's like it always happens or it's super common, but it's a thing that happens. People who you think may be questioning their gender identity do not need you complicating it for them. Right? Like, let's say somebody actually is an egg. Don't you think saying haha egg might make things a little bit complicated for them in a time where maybe they're thinking about their gender identity? I don't know. I think it's one of the more, I wouldn't say toxic, but cringy aspects of the trans community. You guys got to stop that, or at least tone it down. Then stop playing Fallout New Vegas. Good one. Because to be clear, the only people that hurts are people questioning their gender identity that are going to be confused or feel pressured or whatever by that, Nobody who's like trying to listen, what I imagine it like is like you ever be a kid and you start cleaning your room and you're like, you do it all on your own. You're just like, the room's kind of messy. I'm gonna start cleaning my room. So you're cleaning your room and then your mom walks in and says, your room's a filthy mess, clean it. And you're just like, well, no, I don't want to anymore. Because now someone's ordered you to do it, and now you're not doing it out of your own volition, like, an autonomous, being. It's, an order that's being barked out of you. So you literally want to stop cleaning out of spite. The motivation will just drain out of your body. I imagine it somewhat being a little bit like that, right? Like, if you think you might be trans, and you're, like, considering, like, coming out as trans, and then people are, like, hurling, haha, you're trans, egg at you all the time, then isn't that just going to, like, have that same effect? I get what you're saying, Zan, but I don't think it's worth a segment. If anything, you're making it sound bigger than it is. It could play into conservative stereotypes, which aren't true. You're right about it potentially playing into untrue conservative stereotypes. That's the worry. What I want to pick out there, though, is the making it sound bigger than it is. I'm not saying it's an epidemic of that exact scenario happening, but the trans people online call somebody who does anything even remotely, or any cis man who does anything even remotely non-masculine an egg. Are you saying that's not pretty damn common in the trans online spaces? Are you sure? If I was a robot and you could, like, scan my memory, like scan my brain for like since I installed Fallout New Vegas and started playing it on stream, the amount of times the word egg has popped in front of my face. Okay? I've been called an egg like 150 times since I started streaming Fallout New Vegas. I've done 2 Fallout New Vegas streams. It's a little bit excessive, okay? It's a little bit fucking excessive. Oh my god. I like how I started this segment furiously defending trans people and then end this segment furiously lecturing trans people. That's how any Xander Hall segment ought to go. Well, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon, follow my social medias, link down below. Donate, subscribe, or gift a sub to me if you want to support me financially. And remember, half of today's donos are, of course, going to Keffels for her GoFundMe to help recover from the insane harassment, swatting, and abuse she's faced on the part of crazy Nazis on the internet and the the London, Ontario, Canada Police Department. So yeah, we're gonna be donating half of the. It's not much, but it'll be a nice little coin to add on top of the pile. I think Zan misunderstood. I wasn't saying egg is uncommon. I was saying the anecdote I don't think happens that much. Oh, of course, I understand. It's hard to communicate your entire point through chat. So I understand. It's okay. I love you. Okay, Kira, Tenny, Kel. I love you. Okay, it's okay. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Comment your favorite part of the video down below or something. It always helps with engagement. You know how it is. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and have a good one.